Welcome back to the Weekly Huddle podcast. I'm your host, Owen, and today I was originally going to film the predictive mock draft I made a couple days ago. I made it the same day I made of what I would do mock draft. However, a lot of stuff has happened, including the Aaron Rodgers trade and the rumor about who will be going number one overall. And I decided to now just quickly redo it and then talk over and do a second recording of my predictive mock draft to go out so that way it was a little more accurate. Now that we're only 2 days away from the draft. So I just want to dive right into it. Don't want to waste too much time here. First overall pick, this is where I do want to talk about, is Carolina Panthers take Will Levis, quarterback out of Kentucky. Now, this came out earlier today, and the odds have shifted heavily in Will Levis' favor. Apparently, he's been telling friends and family that he's going to be drafted number one overall. This could just be a way for the odds makers to win some money back, and it's really going to be Bryce Young still, and that this is a false rumor they're putting out, so that way they can, like I said, shift the lines in their favor. However, I personally think this would be a good decision for them. With Carolina, it's between Will Levis and Bryce Young for me. Where I think they want to go with Will Levis over Bryce Young is that, while Bryce may be a better passer right now, Will Levis has the higher upside, in my opinion. Stronger arm, better athlete, just overall bigger frame to really fit in with the league. And still has some of those wild plays that Bryce gives you, except in a bigger frame with more athleticism. And with Carolina having already a way better supporting cast when it comes to receiving help and consistent offensive line than Levis had when he was in Kentucky, he could probably step in and play day one and not have to play nearly as much hero ball. But at the same time, they have a quarterback-friendly system with Frank Reich, head coach, so they could take one of these more project quarterbacks like a Levis and really tune him into the kind of quarterback they want him to be. And they have a stalwart there in Andy Dalton who can start. And we've seen last year that he still has some starting capabilities in him. So he has no pressure to start right away. He has a quarterback-friendly system with a good, to not great, but decent offensive roster around him and supporting cast, especially coming from what he had in Kentucky his final season. So I think going Will Levis here is a smart move. It's between him and Bryce Young. I'm not sure how accurate that's going to be, but we'll see. I think it's a good move, and I like the idea of it, and it's being rumored right now, so I'm just going to run with it and take that as our predictive pick number one. Number two is going to be the Houston Texans taking Bryce Young, quarterback out of Alabama. It's been pretty much a common understanding that Bryce Young is the guy the Texans want, and if he's not there, they're probably not going quarterback. However, with the most recent update and with how the board fell with that recent update, Texans are going to stay here and take Bryce Young. I also didn't want to mock any trades or anything, and just felt like this was the smartest way for them to go, and it fits with what they have been rumored to be wanting to do. Number three is the Arizona Cardinals, and normally I would have taken Jalen Carter here. However, with all the red flags and things like that, and the fact that Will Anderson is still here, and the fall off between Jalen Carter to Will Anderson on my big board is like half a point, I think that the Cardinals will view it the same way, and they want more of a traditional edge rusher regardless. Like Jalen Carter, you would like saying you could probably move him to a 5-tech D end, and it'd be fine. Whereas Will Anderson, you know you can play him there. You can also bounce him outside. He gives you a lot more versatility and fits their defensive scheme a lot better than I think Jalen Carter would have. They would have potentially tried him out at different positions than what Georgia played him as. So I think this was probably a safer pick regardless. Maybe not as high upside, but with Jalen Carter's red flags, this is probably the better way to go. And then at number four, we have the Indianapolis Colts taking Anthony Richardson, the quarterback out of Florida. I really do think that with the quarterback's coach and all the coaches, I don't know if it's quarterback's coach, but just the head coach himself, coming from Philadelphia, that the mobile quarterback is going to be something that's going to be valued for this new Colts team. And yes, they don't have an entrenched starter. They do have like Gardner Minshew and like, I guess, Nick Foles or Sam Ehlinger, who are like the entrenched starters from last year, to really take over the load and prevent Anthony Richardson from being forced into the starting lineup. However, I think you could take a similar pathway that Jalen Hurts took, which was starting a few games towards the end of the season, and then the next season just ride it out after he gets a little grooming from the new head coaching staff. So I think the Colts will value that mobility and the elite upside Richardson possesses, and will go here over C.J. Stroud at 4. And number 5, the Seattle Seahawks are going to take Jalen Carter. It's been heavily rumored that they're going to take Jalen Carter here at 5. We almost put it in pen. And I think it's a perfect fit for them. They have a needed interior defensive line. They haven't had anyone dominant there since Michael Bennett left. And he wasn't even really a true defensive tackle, so even probably longer than that. So Jalen Carter with his red flags will fall to 5 because, even despite all that, he's just the best talent in this draft class. And I think the Seattle Seahawks, who have had a history of bringing these kind of like characters who has some red flags like Richard Sherman in, and really just giving him a new home, So this could be a good fit, and I think Jalen Carter probably has cleaned his act up since that happened. It's just going to be whether or not the league can get over that and assume he's a changed man. So that's why I think he doesn't fall too far. And like I said, it's been rumored heavily that the Seattle Seahawks are looking to grab him here. At number 6, Detroit's going to grab Devon Witherspoon, cornerback out of Illinois. Well, it's between Witherspoon and Gonzalez. They've been the rumored number 1 corners in the league's eyes going into this draft, and I really just think Witherspoon has been getting more hype. And with Detroit, it's been this entire process, 6th overall pick, no matter what, is going to be a cornerback. And with how much hype Witherspoon's getting and the fact that they straight away to Kuda, I think going with Witherspoon, the more man-heavy corner in this draft class with insane intangibles and athleticism, as well as being kind of local when it's like Illinois, close by to Michigan. If my geography is serving me right. So just going to go with that one, and I think that's pretty safe. Either cornerback, I'll take it as a W here. At number 7 is the Las Vegas Raiders taking Tyree Wilson, edge out of Texas Tech. The Raiders have come out and said they're not taking a quarterback. So even though C.J. Stroud is still on the board, I don't believe he's going to go here. And I think C.J. Stroud's going to be our big faller for this draft class. For whatever reason, I know I'm not the highest on him, but I still am higher on him than like Anthony Richardson because I think he's a more complete quarterback right now. He's probably behind Bryce Young, the next second best day 1 starter out of this draft class. And that's saying something because Bryce Young's pretty good and Stroud is right behind him. Nowhere even close as Richardson, and Levis is probably pretty much a tier below them. So I don't understand why the Vegas is so opposed to taking a quarterback, especially like a CJ Stroud is here, but that is what the rumor mill is saying, what the pundits are talking about. So I think they're going to take Tyree Wilson, who has a little bit of a fall here. I know in a lot of mocks he's going at 5 to Seattle because Houston takes Will Anderson and Arizona takes Jalen Carter, so he's up on the number 5 overall pick. And I think some teams probably see him as not that much of a fall off from Will Anderson. So a team like the Raiders, who, while they do have pass rushers and Max Crosby and Chandler Jones, could probably add another one to the rotation and even have Tyree Wilson like reduced down inside and rush from the interior, or just have a good rotation going, especially with Chandler Jones getting up there in age and not really being as productive as they would have hoped for last season. So this could be a potential to move on from a cap casualty area. Doesn't really help them to win right away, which might help them with the quarterback race next year, and just adds another dynamic piece across from Max Crosby. So that's why I went with Tyree Wilson here. That probably is one of the weaker ones of my draft, I think. At number 8, the Atlanta Falcons will go Christian Gonzalez, the quarterback out of Oregon. They just need some cornerback help. They just really want to solidify that secondary, and it's been kind of the rumor mill and what everyone has identified as their biggest weakness so far coming up into the draft. So I think going Christian Gonzalez is probably the best thing just because he's getting floated for number 1 corner consideration. I went with Witherspoon as number 1 corner, number 2 corner for the next team that needs corner help. Maybe the Raiders could have taken Gonzalez here, but since they have not, I will give him to the Falcons, who passed on C.J. Stroud as well, with some confidence in Desmond Ridder. And even though some teams, including myself, probably would say Desmond Ridder isn't preventing me from drafting C.J. Stroud, I don't think the Falcons feel the same way. They want to instill confidence in that quarterback and take another one the year after in the first round, 8th overall. Probably won't go along with doing that. So Christian Gonzalez is going to be the pick here. At number 9, the Chicago Bears are going to go Peter Skoronski. I don't know if he's still considered the number 1 tackle in this class. I know Paris Johnson's been getting a lot of late season push up the board. However, I still think Skoronski has had like that stranglehold in the number 1 spot for most of the year. And with it coming down to it, and some betting circles saying Paris Johnson's going to be the first one off, I think the Bears probably have done their due diligence and we're okay with moving down from 1 to 9 because Skoronski was probably their guy, and that the fact that they could probably still get him at 9. And since he's here, they're probably going to take him. The fear might have been that Paris Johnson goes before they got to pick at 9, and they were like, well, it's fine. We have Skoronski as the number 1 guy anyway. And I don't think they're going to sway away from that. So I do feel like the Bears have had Skoronski pegged since the beginning. So that's why I go with him here at 9. And at number 10, Philadelphia is going to take Nolan Smith, the edge out of Georgia, with already having Tyree Wilson and Will Anderson off the board. And even though I don't feel that Nolan Smith is in the same category as those guys, I feel like the Eagles want to go corner and edge rusher, and they're going to go defense with these picks in the first round they have. And the fact that Witherspoon and Gonzalez, there's not that much of a fall off from the guys from there towards the back half of the first round where they could snag another one of these corners, as opposed to after Tyree Wilson, you're falling into the Lucas Van Ness and Miles Murphys of the world, that I think that the Eagles won't value those guys as impact starters or somebody that would fit with their defense the way that Nolan Smith would. So they're going to grab Nolan Smith here at 10. and just look to see if they can grab a corner with their later pick without having as much of a fall off talent-wise as there is between, edge 3 and edge 4 here. Even though they're all still good, I think they will value Nolan Smith as being in that top tier with Wilson and Anderson, whereas the other two they'll have a tier below, and they'd rather just go with that and then maybe value the corners closer together in talent-wise or grades. At number 11, the Tennessee Titans are going to take Paris Johnson Jr. They really cleaned house this year, and that included getting rid of a longtime tackle, Taylor Lewan. I really do think they need to build this offense up, and that, yes, C.J. Stroud was here, but Malik Willis is a long-term investment at quarterback, and they still have Ryan Tannehill on the roster, so adding a third quarterback in the mix that will be competing for a starting job with a high-value pick, and if he loses out to both of those guys, it'll kind of be seen as like a waste of picks. So if I'm the Titans GM, who's brand new, got hired after this past offseason, where they fired the previous GM midseason, I'm thinking I don't want to saddle my name to a quarterback in the early first rounds, my first ever pick, that will potentially not even be the backup on the depth chart if the whole thing goes to plan and the guys who are in our system are more progressed. Like you're anticipating Malik Willis to progress. That's why you drafted him in the third round. However, if he doesn't progress, then C.J. Stroud could take the backup job, but you don't want to bank on that. And you want to probably establish your GM reign with a good, solid pick, which Paris Johnson will be, and fills a hole on your offense. So you're really not risking anything here. And then if the quarterback situation doesn't work out, you can maybe package Derrick Henry or somebody else next year to move up to get another quarterback in next year's draft, or try to find one in the free agent market. But right now, I think you have to roll with the duo Tannehill and Willis, and just hope Willis proceeds enough that you don't regret passing on Stroud here. But I don't see a world where the Titans will draft quarterback in this first round. At number 12, the Houston Texans take Zay Flowers, wide receiver out of Boston College. First wide receiver off the board. I really was going back and forth between JSN and Zay Flowers. JSN's been a popular pick here. However, there's been a lot of buzz about Zay Flowers being a lot higher on NFL boards than he's getting consideration for in the public media. And I'm one of those people where I don't think he's going to be like a first-round player. And the fact that he's being floated as the number one overall wide receiver is kind of I'm not the biggest fan of. However, I can see why people would think that if you're able to get past some things you think schematically he can fit in best with what you want to do. So they're going to go out here and get a receiver for Bryce Young. Now they picked him up in the second overall pick. And the fact that they probably will like a guy like Zay Flowers, who's that more move wide receiver. And I don't want to invoke the name Debo, but can fill that kind of role on this Shanahan offense with the head coach of the Texans, DeMeco Ryans. He's going to want to instill that, have this more accurate quarterback, find the guys on the crossers and things like that, make plays after the catch. And of the guys who are available on the board at the top of the draft when it comes to wide receivers, Zay Flowers probably fits that mold the best. So grabbing him here, it's more of scheme fit. Texans probably value him higher than some of these other guys just because of that. So that's why I have Zay Flowers as the first receiver off the board. And then after that, at 13, the Packers go second receiver on the board with Jackson Smith and Jigba. Just offer something opposed to the dynamics they already have in the wide receiver room for the Packers. They have bigger guys who can get that win downfield and have that deep speed. Smith and Jigba, while injury prone, is more of that route runner, middle of the field, slot type. So gives a little bit of that articulation to the offense that they don't have, that they're going to want to surround Jordan Love with. Give some compliments to what they have on the outside already, and really just puts Jordan Love in a situation to succeed now that you've traded Aaron Rodgers away, and he's your confirmed starting quarterback and a guy that has no issues with working with rookies like Rodgers did. Jordan Love should be able to get some good production out of JSN and Christian Watson and whoever else they're going to be able to incorporate into the offense this year. So I feel like this is a changing over the leaf. They're finally going to start investing in wide receivers, maybe even just to stick it to Rodgers. But yeah, I think JSN probably fits their offense the best with what they need right now. Number 14 is going to be New England Patriots, taking Lucas Van Ness. I don't know if I think Van Ness is better than Myles Murphy. They're about the same tier of player for me. However, with New England needing an edge rusher, and Van Ness just gives off Patriot vibes more than Murphy does anyway. More of that big-bodied guy who can be moved around, can play on the interior, can play in a 2-point stance, can play in a 3-point stance off the edge. He's just a guy that I think will really be able to be moved around and just reeks Belichick off of him. And, Patriots going defense despite having offensive ineptitudes is really kind of their calling card. But I can kind of see it in this draft class, seeing as there's a lot more wide receiver depth than there is at the top of the draft. And that's what you really need. Bring Bill O'Brien in, and you're hoping that it was mostly just the play calling that was the issue last year for the offense. So you're going to grab like a wide receiver or two in the rest of the draft and really focus on shoring up that defense so that way you don't really get blown out by these other offenses that are stacking up in the AFC East. And speaking of the AFC East, the New York Jets here with the previous Green Bay Packer pick. Going to take Darnell Wright, offensive tackle out of Tennessee. I'm not a first-round Darnell Wright kind of guy. However, I do see people talking about him as being a surprise high pick this upcoming draft in 2 days. And I think with the Jets having a need at right tackle, still hoping for Mekhi Becton to work out, but at the same time having other guys in competition for that left tackle position, bringing a guy in who's going to be your solidified right tackle and then having the competition choose your left tackle is probably best. And even if the right doesn't win the right tackle job, you'll have a competent guy who can really move around in the rest of the positions, like at guard and things like that. I don't think you draft him here to be your left tackle. You draft him here to really just be that stalwart on your right side. However, crazier things have happened. So Darnell right here, I think the Jets will probably value him higher than a guy like Broderick Jones because he's more of a finished product. Broderick Jones gives too much of a Mekhi Becton vibes, I feel like, for this Jets team that has a Mekhi Becton already on their roster. At 16 and halfway through the first round in typical draft year, not this one because we're one pick short, the slide stops for C.J. Stroud. Now, if I projected trades, this probably would have happened sooner, probably most likely at 12 with the Texans, seeing as they probably would have assumed that Zay Flowers wasn't a lot of people's number one wide receiver. However, I didn't do trades here, so Washington's going to pick up Stroud. They are trying to bank on Sam Howell, and it's kind of like the same issue I had when it came to drafting him to the Falcons. However, I feel like the Commanders have slightly less holes than the Falcons do, and that Howell, having had no starting experience, unlike Ritter, who did have some starting experience last year for the Falcons, Ritter having that starting experience was going to prevent them from doing that because the people have seen that like Ritter was already doing decently well in the starts he did get. Like, he wasn't great, but they saw flashes, whereas Howell basically got no playing time because of injury. So you bring in Stroud here, have them have a two-player competition, and you're not really going to be upset with Howell getting benched for C.J. Stroud. And I was always more of a Ritter guy than Howell guy, so this kind of reflects that as well. At number 17, I have the Pittsburgh Steelers going Broderick Jones, offensive tackle of Georgia. Now, this has been the popular Joey Porter Jr. spot for the Steelers. However, I feel like the offensive line is a bit more of an issue, and I know this is not what I would do mock draft, but at the same time, a lot of times Broderick Jones isn't still available here. So if you're the Steelers and want to establish a running game, I feel like they're going to value beefing up that offensive line, really protecting their franchise quarterback and their franchise running back, and really just coasting what they can get at cornerback in round 2 or round 3, and really just seeing if that can work. They still have Levi Wallace and some of their other guys they had a holdover from last year. So they weren't terrible. They just need some more addition back there, and what they're going to get when it comes to second-round corners is going to be a lot better than what they can get with second-round tackles, especially with how they're coming off the board here. So grabbing a guy like Broderick Jones is probably better, and why you don't see it mocked more often is because he's usually not here around 17 for them. At 18 here, I have Detroit going Michael Mayer, tight end out of Notre Dame. I was also debating Darnell Washington here, but I feel like the Washington hype is just getting blown up. Some people will have Mayer and Kincaid fall. I felt like Mayer was a perfect replacement for what they had in Hockenson in Detroit. And while they didn't get their quarterback this year, they are going to surround Jared Goff with enough weapons to really compete, and he just needs to not mess up. So you're getting him a good tight end to pair with those wide receivers and a guy who can also contribute in the run blocking game. Maybe not as well as Darnell Washington can immediately, but better than what a guy like Kincaid will give you. So I feel like this is where Mayer would go, and it's kind of like a good fit to team where they got rid of Hockenson just because he didn't provide all that value and they want to pay him. And now they get a guy who's basically his identical copy, maybe a little less athletic, but somebody who fits that mold and is getting comped to how Hockenson was coming out of Iowa. So not that it's really just replacing him with a draft pick immediately after you trade him. So they're getting cheaper and younger at that position without a major drop off in talent. At 19, the Bucs fixed their cornerback issues with Joey Porter Jr. I'm not the biggest Joey Porter Jr. fan, however, I still do have a first round grade on him. And Tampa Bay needs to get longer. They're going to want to compete now in this division, even though Brady's gone because of how weak it is. And you have guys like Chris Olave and DJ Chark, some of these taller receivers. Actually, Olave, I think, was 6'1", 5'10", somewhere around there. But these guys who are more outside receiving types. And getting a guy who's Joey Porter Jr., who can be that longer corner, really play the boundary, is going to help out in this division that's moving towards getting new quarterbacks like the Panthers with Will Levis, the Saints with Derek Carr, and the Falcons are going to try to roll with Kyle Pitts and Desmond Ridder and things like that. So you get a guy like Porter Jr. who can match up against a physical freak like Pitts just because of his length and athleticism. So This is going to be more of a fit kind of thing, and I would probably maybe pick Deonte Banks here or Bijan Robinson over the Tampa Bay Bucks, but I just think that their need at corner is a lot bigger than running back, so I went with the more popular cornerback at this very time in the draft process. So Joey Porter Jr. here for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. At 20, the Seattle Seahawks grab Myles Murphy. Really fits that mold of these bigger guys. He's 6'5", 275, who are super athletic freaks. Kind of like what they wanted to get in LJ Collier when they drafted him in the first round a few years back. I know they already drafted defensive line with Jalen Carter. However, that's more of an interior presence. And now that they can get Myles Murphy, either they can rotate both those guys into different positions, like 5 techs and even 3 tech D tackles, or really use Murphy as an outside rusher and really just rotate him in with their already established guys and just beef up that defensive line that's going to be going against the San Francisco 49ers twice a year. And now that they're in the NFC, they can really compete in the NFC West with the Rams and Cardinals struggling. You can really see that the Seahawks could compete for that division title and maybe even compete in the conference itself. So if you can overcome the 49ers, who are probably your biggest threat right now, then you'll probably have a safe bet to be able to go into a deep playoff run. So beefing up that defensive line is really important for them, and I think going both Carter and Murphy really accomplishes that.
And number 22, we have the Los Angeles Chargers taking Kalijah Cansey, the interior defensive lineman from Pitt. Interior defensive line has always been an issue for the Chargers, and we've been constantly addressing it every year in mock drafts, and I think we finally found that player who will fit that Aaron Donald mold that head coach, blanking on his name, not Brandon Staley. Is it Brandon Staley? Whatever. The guy who used to be the Rams coordinator, who's now the head coach of the Chargers. I don't know why I'm brain farting on his name for right now. But he has not had that interior presence like he did when he was at the Rams with Aaron Donald. So I think Kalijah Cansey can come in. He's getting comped to guys who are smaller like Ed Oliver and Aaron Donald now. He's never going to be Aaron Donald. No one is really Aaron Donald. But he could probably be something of the level of Ed Oliver, but without using the 9th overall pick on him. So I feel like that's a good fit when it comes to positional need as well as stylistic for their defense. And I think the Chargers really have nowhere else to really turn with this pick. So board kind of fell perfectly for them. At 23, Baltimore Ravens take Deonte Banks, cornerback out of Maryland. They really needed to just revitalize that room. They always were strong defense, strong run game. And regardless of what happens to Lamar Jackson or not, they have a loaded wide receiver room, and they have some more options come second, third, fourth, fifth. This is a really deep receiver class. So if they want to continue adding to that room, they can. But for right now, grabbing one of the top cornerback prospects off the board and the remaining guys who still have a first-round grade for me would be important just to be able to stabilize that back end and really provide themselves with a fallback on if Lamar doesn't resign. They have strong defense, strong running game still that can still win them games, especially in the NFC North where you have Joe Burrow and now Kenny Pickett, Deshaun Watson. You need to stop the pass, especially if you're going to play that ground control kind of game. So Deonte Banks really helps you out with that. At 24, the Vikings take Quentin Johnson, the wide receiver out of TCU. I've seen him fall off a lot of predictive things for number one wide receiver after being kind of a lock. And I think it's because he measured in 2 inches shorter than what he was originally billed at playing at. So instead of being this 6'4" monster, he's really only 6'2", and he's doing a lot more of things that don't look like he'll be able to accomplish being only 6'2" at the NFL level. Whereas at 6'4", the things he was doing in college may have been able to translate easier over to the NFL level. But I think the Vikings really need that bigger body receiver. They lost Adam Thielen. They really need somebody who can work over the middle of the field and really complement Justin Jefferson and not be a real slot guy. So that's why I didn't go Jordan Addison here. I think Quentin Johnson could be the opposite outside wide receiver for them. And just because he's going to a situation where they already have their number one and their slot, he's not going to be demanded to be all that in a bag of chips right away. So he'll be able to slowly work in and not feel a lot of pressure, unlike a guy who has been drafted to the Vikings before. I think it was Dodson out of TCU that was drafted to the Vikings. I could be mixing them up. That one wide receiver draft class where all of them were terrible. But yeah, there's going to be no real heavy expectations because there's already these monumental figures in the passing game or established starters, and you're just going to be the other complementary piece for a team that still thinks they can compete. So Quentin Johnson could probably fit in here best, and it won't have any pressure applied on him right away anyway. Next up is the John Michael Schmitz and New York Giants. This one's been kind of locked in since the Senior Bowl, so I'm not going to change much of that. And I do prefer other interior offensive linemen over John Michael Schmitz, but I can see where the Giants would value him with his leadership skills, and he is a good zone blocker. I just think he doesn't give a lot of room for a power blocking scheme. But with Brian Dable as their head coach, I can definitely see them leaning more towards a zone-heavy system with a hole at center. So John Michael Schmitz really fits that, and it's really felt like he's been penned in here at 26th overall pick for at least a couple months now. So this one wasn't too hard for me to pick. At 27, Dallas Cowboys go Brian Branch, safety out of Alabama. I felt like this could have been a Bijan Robinson spot. I thought also maybe the Vikings or the Ravens, but the Ravens have entrenched starters and really have a deep room there, so I didn't think they want to add another first-round talent. That was kind of a, spoil of riches there where they have some actual needs. Chargers could have went Bijan because of the whole Austin Eckler situation, but as of right now, he's still a Charger, so I'm not going to make that move. And if I'm inside the Chargers room and I know we're trying to actively shop him, then maybe I'm making that pick and it really seals his fate. But for right now, I think Kalijah Kancey is what they really need on that defense. So this is the only other spot these past few picks that I felt like Robinson could have went with the Cowboys. Cutting Ezekiel Elliott with the potential of bringing him back. I still think they probably should. But right now, Tony Pollard's on the shelf with a broken leg, and he was going to be their starting running back that was going to take over for Zeke. So they could go Bijan Robinson and just having him spell Tony Pollard or the other way around and really have like a 1-2 complement, which they really ran with Zeke and Pollard, especially since Pollard's been in the league. However, I think Dallas really has struggled to fill safety. And it's like every year they're looking at the number one safety on the free agent market or in the draft, and they're never usually able to land them, or they're not a stylistic fit or anything. And I really think Brian Branch is going to be that fit. You can allow Malik Hooker maybe to go down and play some more nickel corner or get closer to the line of scrimmage, and really have Branch either play your slot corner if you don't want Malik Hooker playing that, or playing free safety. And if Malik Hooker gets hurt again, which has been a trend in his career, Brian Branch is a slotting in starter right there. So I really think this could be the answer for Cowboys' longtime safety woes, and that's something that they'll probably value fixing. At 28, the Buffalo Bills take Bijan Robinson. I feel like they probably had some other guys they would have went here when it came to offensive line or wide receivers. I just don't think they're in love with Jordan Addison. And if Bijan's here, there's no way they pass on him. Like, they have James Cook and Damian Harris, but I wouldn't think either of those guys would prevent you from drafting a Bijan Robinson just because James Cook is unproven as a starter. Damian Harris is known what he is. Like, got starter time, and he's going to that power guy. I feel like if Bijan, they don't want to grind him down in those third and short areas, you can put Damian Harris in. If you want more of a pass option, and while Bijan learns the offense, you can put James Cook in, or even run two back sets a lot. So this is also kind of me hoping and wanting them to take Bijan, but at the same time, there's been a lot of things linking them to the Bills. And I really think he could be a number changer to help out Josh Allen. So people are talking about them adding in a wide receiver, says Josh Allen, bringing in a running back that really makes safeties come up and have a team be worried about a home run play, even in non-running formations, is going to help out that Bills offense and that Bills passing game when it comes to like RPOs and read options and play action. So I think Bijan Robinson really changes the numbers on a defense where it makes it easier on Allen, and whatever makes it easier on Allen is going to be good for the team. So we're going to go with Bijan here and hopefully land a linebacker in the second round. At number 29, the Cincinnati Bengals go Dalton Kincaid, tight end out of Utah. Right now, Irv Smith Sr.'s slotted in to be their starting tight end, and I really think Kincaid can bring that Travis Kelce-esque tight end player to their offense. And with the question marks surrounding T. Higgins and whether or not he's going to be back, having a guy who's basically a beefed-up wide receiver in Kincaid could really alleviate that pressure. And if you want to go with more running the ball, now with Irv Smith and Kincaid, you can do some more two tight end sets, which you weren't really able to do last year with Hayden Hurst being your only real viable tight end starter. So Kincaid is coming in, being an immediate upgrade in tight end room, maybe becoming your second leading receiving option by next year. So moving on from T. Higgins is a little bit more easy to stomach. And then you have Tyler Boyd in the slot and obviously Jamar Chase. So just adding more things, more dimensions to the offense to help out Joe Burrow. They were pretty set around the rest of their roster. And I think adding an elite, potentially player at tight end position who maybe won't be a top half the league tight end when he first comes in the league, but has that potential to be a top 5 tight end in a few years' time, could really make it be a difference for this team, really get them over the hump to make the Super Bowl. Just see what Travis Kelce does for that Chiefs offense. That's kind of the similar amount of impact I think Kincaid could bring to this Bengals offense, but obviously he's not Travis Kelce. At 30, I feel like this is going to be the Keon White spot in the New Orleans Saints. He was invited to the draft. I'm not high on him as a first-round guy, but there are some people who are, and that's clear for the reason why he's there now. He's going to be in Kansas City for the draft itself, which is usually indicative of word being spread around the league that he's going to be a first-round pick, or at least an early day 2 pick. So I think the Saints, with needing to find a complement and a replacement for Marcus Davenport, opposite Cameron Jordan, and maybe an eventual Cameron Jordan replacement, as well as just how much overturn and upheaval has been on that defensive line because of all the cap issues they've been suffering. Bring a guy in who can play either D tackle or D end, is that more bigger-bodied guy, kind of like how Davenport was, will be a really good way to replace what you lost, as well as maybe even getting better at that position, because Davenport never really developed to what they wanted him to be. So Keon White comes in. He's a multiple area starter on your defensive line, really replaces what you lost in free agency at a cheaper cost, and as well could be a further cheaper cost down the road when Cam Jordan either hangs it up or needs to be a cap casualty. So that was my thought process here. If Keon White was going to go anywhere, I really only felt comfortable taking him with the Saints here, and it kind of makes sense, especially because he was invited to the draft, that he's going to be in the first round, and this is the only real spot I felt like he fit. At 31, the Philadelphia Eagles are going to go Julius Brents, cornerback out of Kansas State. There's been a lot of hype around him, especially when it comes to post-Senior Bowl stuff. I think someone's going to take a shot on him in the first round. I'm not sure who, though, but I feel like the Eagles, after missing out on one of those top corners, the top 2 at the beginning of the draft class when it comes to the 10th overall pick, they grab Nolan Smith, and then they come to the bottom of the first round, and they're like, okay, we have some of these now later first round kind of graded cornerbacks. Let's just grab our favorite one. And they're going to grab Julius Brents here, who has been, like I said, getting a lot of hype. I personally have not watched him yet. I have him on my short list to do before the draft gets here Thursday, since I do believe he's going to be a first round pick. However, I do think that the Eagles are going to go some combination of edge rusher, cornerback, or maybe even like a wide receiver or a running back here. So this could really go any way I wanted to go with it. I really felt Brents, just because he's a name I've heard a lot about coming in the first round, probably would have been a good pick just because he was still on the board and really was fitting one of those positional needs when it comes to value and things like that. So that is my predictive mock draft. This is going to be coming out on Wednesday. It recorded on Tuesday, so hopefully nothing monumental shakes up the draft prior to Thursday. I know I have no trades in here, which is not going to happen when it comes to the draft itself. There's always at least like one. So this isn't going to be totally accurate, but I feel like this is roughly about what I think is going to happen on Thursday, and we'll see what kind of stuff we can assume is going to happen and see how close I actually get to it. So if you enjoy this, check out some other draft content I've been putting out leading up to the draft. I've been real busy working on that, as well as check out my player profiles over at the Dynasty Index, as well as Caleb's write-ups on quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers, and tight ends, and our Dynasty football stuff, especially now that the draft's coming over and all these Dynasty leagues are going to starting up or having their rookie drafts. So go check that out if you really want to see where you think these guys should be drafted. We do mock drafts over in the Discord on that place. It's only $1 on Patreon per month, so it's really cheap. And if you really want to support me without paying any money, go over to Defiant Takes Football, read the articles over there for free, or go subscribe to Defiant Takes Football YouTube channel where I help out on occasion. Other than that, I'll see you guys in the next one.